Hey friends, welcome to Intentional Motherhood. I'm your host, Kelsey Red, and this is the podcast for all you amazing high vibe moms who are ready to create the life you've dreamed of without hustling harder. And I am so excited about this episode because we have been building up to this for I feel like so long. We went through all the basics, setting a foundation for understanding thought frequencies and energy and how our emotions are the amplifiers. In our last episode, we finally got into the real meat and potatoes of what manifesting is and what it isn't. And we even heard an incredible experience of my dear friend Whitney, who has created a beautiful life of her dreams and is actually even building more by creating a course to help you guys become the creator in your homes. So don't forget to check that out. There's a link in the show notes to get you a discount to her course. And there's also a link to my course, the Stop the Spiral. Both get you a 25% discount on both those courses. So go check those out in the show notes. And now we get to, I think, what I have been really anxious to get to and really excited to get to, but I've felt like I wanted to set a little bit of a foundation for you to understand the gist of where we're going. And now we're talking about if we believe all this, if we understand that our thoughts have energy and frequency, and we have an ability to create experiences through coherent mind body rehearsals of that future that we want to experience. And if we understand what manifesting is and that it's a partnership with God, then we need to answer another question, which is what is the character of God that allows him to be a part of this manifesting experience? Where do we see evidence in the Bible that would tell us that God is interested in this kind of manifestation that we're talking about? And how do we expect him to act when we have amazing, wonderful desires in righteousness? How do we think that he is going to react to those desires? So we are going to dive into the Bible and talk about some experiences with Jesus Christ's miracles that teach us a little bit about the character of God. And you may notice that I maybe am using God and Jesus Christ interchangeably, and that's because Jesus tells us that everything he does what he has seen the Father do. And if you know me, you know the Father also. Whoever sees me sees him who sent me. So you may hear me kind of interchangeably using God and Jesus Christ to describe the character of God based on Christ's miracles that we have written about in the Bible. So the first one I want to talk about is when Christ feeds the 5,000. Let's talk through this story a little bit. Jesus has this large crowd of people gathered together listening to him. And at some point, the disciples start to get a little concerned and tell Jesus, hey, we're in this way desolate area and these people have to eat. So why don't we send them away, send them to their villages to let them go buy something for themselves so they can eat? And Jesus, in his constant willingness to teach, tells them, you give them something to eat. And the disciples are like, do you want us to go buy 200 denarii worth of bread to feed these people? Which is like saying, like, that's like half a year's salary. Do you want us to go spend half a year's salary to get enough bread that would just barely be enough to get these people just a tiny bit to eat? Do you want us to go do that? And Jesus says, well, how many loaves do we have? And of course, they find the young boy who has 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And this is the part of the story that I absolutely love. Jesus blesses the food and tells them to go distribute the food after all the people have sat down and tells everyone to eat as much as they want. And then afterwards, he even asks his disciples to go pick up all the leftovers, and there were baskets full of leftovers. And I want to jump into the Gospel of John because he adds a couple key insights that I think make all the difference in this story. The first one is in John chapter 6, verse 11. He says he takes the loaves, and when he had given thanks, In all the other gospels, we're told that Jesus blesses the bread, but this is the only gospel that mentions that he had given thanks for it. And if you remember our last episode, we talked about how gratitude is the key to manifestation because it puts us in a state of receptivity and in a state of having already received. Your brain is trained to know that when you're giving thanks, it's for something you've already received. So I love that we hear Jesus putting this manifestation principle into action right before he performs this amazing miracle of multiplying the few resources that were available into an abundant feast for all. So that's the first key. The second key that I love is that he tells them, all the people, to eat their loaves and the fishes. And this is the part that I love, as much as they wanted. I get so caught up in feeling like I 100% absolutely know and trust and believe that God will provide for my needs. But I sometimes wonder if God will provide for my wants. And so I love this verse that tells us that he is offering this feast to all these 5,000 people as much as they wanted. He didn't just say, I know you're starving, just take a couple bites to just get you through until you can get home and get more to eat. Or I just want you to eat, just don't take more than you need because, there's really not enough to go around. So, just eat enough so that you can just survive for the next day. He told them to take as much as they wanted. And it was after everyone had eaten their fill that he still instructs his disciples to go and collect all the leftovers. And guess what? There were so many leftovers. And again, this just shows this character of God being someone who is willing to let our cup overflow with blessings, right? He doesn't just give you your bare necessities. He allows you to be just filled and overflowing with blessings and abundance because God does not worry about not having enough. God does not believe in scarcity. There is no limit to what God can multiply and create and manifest instantaneously. So he has no need to have this scarcity mindset of everybody just take the least amount you need, or I'm worried there won't be enough, or there's not enough time, or there's not enough resources, there's not enough of me to go around. Jesus Christ never had that mentality. He was actually always giving above and beyond and blessing people over and above what was even necessary. So I love those two principles. And the next miracle I want to talk about reinforces this idea because, again, it was a miracle not based in necessity, but just based off of willingness to provide for a desire or an abundant, lavish almost ask. And this is the wedding in Canaan, where Jesus's mother comes to him at some point and says, Jesus, they've run out of wine. And he's like, okay, what does that have to do with me? And I get the sense that we maybe are missing a little bit of the rest of the conversation there, but eventually Mary tells the workers at the wedding, just do whatever he tells you. And we all know what comes next. He provides not just wine, not just a cheap tasting wine, not just a watered down version of wine. He provides the most delicious, rich and decadent wine that anyone had tasted, so much so that the leader of the wedding had to stop and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have never seen this happen before where we actually pull out the best wine later in the evening rather than serving it first and serving the cheaper wine later. And again, when we think about the character of God, when we think about how Jesus Christ performs these miracles, he does it out of just a willingness to provide for the extra wants of his mother and the bride and groom's family. This wasn't necessarily a life or death situation, right? This wasn't a necessity. It would have caused a lot of embarrassment. It would have been very shameful. It would have caused some damaged reputation to the families. But I mean, ultimately, life would go on, and yet he still was willing to provide this miracle just because it was asked for. So I bring up these miracles and I make these points because I just want you to understand as we talk more about manifestation and especially how this connects to our spirituality and our prayer life, that God is a God of willingness to bless you with the joys and desires of your heart because he granted you the creative ability and power to have these righteous desires. I think he is willing to allow us to have really joyful and wonderful experiences in this life. I don't think he wants us to just always be barely getting by or just surviving. I think he wants us to experience the abundant life that he promised us, that Jesus promises us in the Bible. And this reminds me of a quote from the Screw Tape Letters, which is, such a wonderful C.S. Lewis classic. And the verse, or sorry, the quote says this. This is in letter 8 of the Screw Tape Letters. So to put this into context, in case you aren't familiar with the Screw Tape Letters, this is written from the perspective of a senior demon trying to train his apprentice demon in winning over humans to the devil's side rather than God's side. So just to make sure that you understand the wording as we read this quote. So the quote says, "We, as in Satan's team or the demons, we want cattles who can finally become food. He, as in God, wants servants who can finally become sons. We want to suck in. He wants to give out. We are empty and would be filled, but he is full and flows over." So again, I just love that this quote really illustrates how God postures himself versus how Satan or the demons posture themselves, which is Satan comes from that place of scarcity, right? We are empty and need to be filled up by consuming or absorbing from us humans, whereas God is already full. He does not need anything. He doesn't need to take anything from us, but he continues to give from an overflowing state. And his goal is to bless us into that overflowing state as well. And of course, we see here the connection where he, as in God, wants to make servants into sons. He wants to allow all of his children to be heirs to what he has and to be heirs to what he is, to actually be as he is. That is the deeper meaning to me of this quote about becoming from servants into sons, to actually reach the level of all that I have is yours, and all that I am, you can be, including the creative power, including the ability to be so full and overflowing that you can give abundantly. And that's one of the manifestation principles, which is giving is actually what creates more rather than, hoarding or consuming like we see the demons or Satan's side describing in this Screw Tape letter. So I wanted to just kind of set the stage for putting into your mind the context of who God is and what his character is like when it comes to his willingness to bless us and his way of reacting to our requests and our desires, especially even something as simple as, I want this wedding feast to be more magical and more wonderful, and I don't want it to end in a disastrous, shameful event. Can you please help? And he was willing to do that. Jesus was willing to come in and from his abundance and from his overflowing creative power, bless this wedding feast. And I am telling you, because God will do the same thing in your life. God is willing to bless you, not just with the bare minimum. He will always provide for you. You can trust in his provision, of course, in the darkest of circumstances, but I also believe he's willing at times to bless you with so much more than you can even hold. Your cup will run over. I love this principle and I want you to understand it as we move forward in the podcast. So thank you for being with me. And the next meditation, the companion meditation for this episode is actually going to be something that I'm so excited about. It's going to be an imaginative prayer. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Maybe if you've participated in any of the Hallow app prayer programs, you might have experienced it. That's where I first experienced it. But think of it as like a guided imagery meditation slash prayer, and it's going to be so amazing. So catch that episode here in the next couple days. And please don't forget to rate and review and share this podcast if it has served you. I can't wait to see you on the next episode of Intentional Motherhood. Remember, you're doing an amazing job.